You've been trying, haven't you? Not just today, for a while now. Quietly, consistently, without making a big thing of it. You've been trying, and something in you already knows that. And something in you is also, if you're being honest, just a little bit exhausted by it. Not because you want to stop, but because you're not sure anymore what the trying is adding up to. And that question, that quiet, persistent, slightly terrifying question, is what this is about. There's a particular kind of stuck that nobody really talks about. Not the stuck of someone who's given up. Not the stuck of someone lying in bed, refusing to engage, numbing everything out. That kind of stuck at least has a clear shape. You can name it. You can point to it. You can say, okay, I see what's happening here. The kind I mean is harder to see, harder to name, because from the outside it looks like a life in motion. You get up. You do the things. You show up where you're supposed to show up. You make efforts. You have goals, or you had them, or you're trying to have them again. You read the articles and watch the videos and make the lists and sometimes even believe for a little while that something is about to click into place. And then the day ends, and you're in the same spot. And the next day starts, and you do it again. And somewhere in the middle of all that motion, you've started to feel something that you don't quite have a word for. It's not depression, though it brushes up against it sometimes. It's not burnout exactly, though that's closer. It's more like running on a track that circles back to the same place. You can feel yourself moving. You can feel the effort. And somehow, you're still in the same field. Here's what mornings feel like when you're in this place. You wake up and for a second, just a second, there's nothing. No weight, no question, no low-grade dread. Just consciousness arriving clean and blank. And then it comes back. All of it, the awareness of where you are and where you thought you'd be. The to-do list that carries over from yesterday and the day before. The sense that today is probably going to be like yesterday, which was like the day before that. Not in every detail, but in the feeling, in the texture of it. And you get up anyway. That's the part people forget to mention when they talk about being stuck. You still get up. You still go. You still try to make the day mean something. That's not nothing. That's actually a lot. But it doesn't feel like a lot from the inside. From the inside, it just feels like survival dressed up as living. And you're tired of that distinction. You want more than survival. That's not greed. That's just being a person who cares about their own life. The worst part, and this is the part that really doesn't get said, is that the trying itself starts to feel like the problem. Because you've been trying. You've been genuinely, effortfully trying for longer than you want to count. And the trying hasn't produced what you thought it would. And so now there's this new, terrible layer on top of the original stuck feeling. The fear that maybe trying is pointless. That maybe effort and outcome have no real relationship. That maybe you're just someone who tries and stays in the same place, and that's just what your life is. I know that thought. I know how dark it gets. I know how reasonable it can sound at 2 in the morning when you're replaying the last year, and you can't identify a single clear, significant, undeniable thing that changed for the better because of your effort. And I also know that thought is not the full truth, but I'm not going to tell you to just think differently. That's not what this is. What I want to do is just stay here with you in it for a minute, because I think the being with it matters. I think you've spent a lot of time trying to think your way out of this feeling, and the thinking hasn't dissolved it. And maybe what needs to happen first, before anything else, is just to actually look at it directly. So let's do that. You're not stuck because you're lazy. You know you're not lazy. Even on your worst days, even the days you stayed in bed too long or avoided the thing you were supposed to do, there was a reason. There's always a reason. Laziness is usually something else wearing that name. Overwhelm, fear, the bone-deep fatigue of someone who has been trying to hold too many things together for too long without enough rest, without enough support, without enough of a sense that it's going anywhere. You're not stuck because you don't want it badly enough. You want it. Maybe you want it so badly that it hurts sometimes. Maybe that want is exactly what makes the stuck feeling so unbearable. because you can feel the gap between where you are and where you want to be, and that gap feels enormous, and you don't know how to cross it, and not knowing makes the wanting feel cruel. You're not stuck because you're not trying. You're stuck because something inside you is tired. Not lazy tired, not giving up tired. Tired in the way that comes from sustained effort in the absence of clear results. Tired the way a person gets tired when they've been walking through fog for a long time and they can't see the path and they're not sure the path exists and they keep walking anyway because what else do you do? And the walking itself is fine. They can walk, but God, they would love to see something familiar, something that confirms they're going somewhere. Let's talk about the moment thing. You know the moment, the one you keep waiting for, the one that's going to make everything different. The breakthrough, the clarity, the sign, the morning you wake up and finally feel ready, finally feel sure, finally feel the way you imagine people who have it figured out feel all the time. You keep waiting for that moment. And here's the uncomfortable thing. That moment, in the form you're imagining it, probably isn't coming. Not because you don't deserve it, not because good things don't happen, but because the way we imagine readiness, this sudden, clean, arrived feeling, that's not how it actually works. That's not how people actually change or move forward or find direction. It almost never happens in a single moment of revelation. It happens slowly, messily, without announcement. And by the time you realize it happened, you're already in the middle of it. But we wait, we keep waiting, because the waiting feels safer than moving. Because moving without certainty means risking being wrong. And being wrong is frightening when you're already not sure of yourself. You keep waiting for a moment that never comes. And in the waiting, days go by, then months. Then you're counting years and trying not to count years and counting them anyway. Can we talk about other people for a second? Because this is part of it, and it would be dishonest to skip it. There is always someone who seems to be moving faster, someone who seems to have what you're reaching for, someone who made the leap you're too scared to make, or found the direction you're still searching for, or built the thing you keep meaning to build. And you watch them, not obsessively, but you watch. Of course you do. We all do. And it does something to you. It creates this painful doubling effect where you're trying to be genuinely happy for them, because you're a decent person and you want to be the kind of person who's genuinely happy for other people. And underneath, that is something much less comfortable. A sharpness. An ache that you don't want to name because numbing it feels like an admission of something small in yourself. But it's not small, and it's not about them. It never really is. It's about the part of you that looks at their life and uses it as evidence against your own. Evidence that you're behind. Evidence that you're missing something. Evidence that other people got handed something you weren't, or figured out something you haven't, or are simply more capable of becoming what they want to become. And none of that is fair, neither to them nor to you. But fair doesn't really enter into it. The feeling does what it does regardless. What I want to say about this, and I mean it simply without trying to resolve it neatly, that feeling of comparison, that tightening in your chest when someone else's life looks like the life you wanted, that is not proof that you're failing. It's proof that you care. And caring, even when it hurts, is not the enemy here. The enemy, if there is one, is using someone else's story to write a verdict about your own. There's something that happens to people who try hard for a long time without seeing results. It's subtle, it builds slowly. You don't notice it happening until it's already happened. You start to hedge. Not dramatically, you don't give up. You're not that person, you've told yourself you're not that person, so you don't quit outright, but something quieter happens. You start to want things a little less openly. You start to protect yourself from your own hope. Because hopping and being disappointed is a specific kind of pain, and you've done that cycle enough times now that some part of you has quietly decided, let's not do that again. Let's want things at a slight distance. Let's not get too attached to any particular outcome. Let's keep the desire small enough that losing it won't break anything. And that self-protection makes sense. It's actually intelligent in a way. Your system learned something and adjusted. but it also means you're now moving through your life with a hand slightly held back. You're trying, but not all the way. You're reaching, but from a safer distance. And you can feel that. You can feel the difference between trying with your full self and trying with this careful, guarded version of yourself that has learned not to lean in too far. And the frustrating thing is that the guarded version is also less likely to produce results. Because the things worth having, the direction, the breakthrough, the real shift, those tend to require the kind of fully committed, vulnerable, embarrassing belief in yourself that you've been slowly learning not to have. It's not a trap exactly, but it's close. I want to say something about the noise. There is so much noise right now about how to fix your life, how to be productive, how to find your purpose, how to get unstuck, the 5 habits of whatever, the morning routine, the journaling practice, the reframe, the mindset shift, the framework, the system, the method, the approach. And maybe some of it has helped you. Probably some of it has. But there's also a chance that the endless accumulation of advice has become its own form of stuck. That you've been consuming ideas about change instead of sitting with the more uncomfortable question underneath all of it, which is, what do I actually want? Not what should I want? Not what makes sense to want. Not what looks good or is achievable or fits within what you think you're capable of or what people expect from someone in your position. What do you actually, privately, genuinely want? And I realize that question sounds simple, but a lot of people haven't really asked it in a long time, or they've asked it and gotten uncomfortable and moved on quickly. Because what you actually want might be inconvenient. It might not match the life you've built. It might require things you're not sure you can do, or changes that feel too large, or admissions that feel too costly. So instead you focus on optimizing what you already have, improving within the existing structure, being more productive inside a life you maybe haven't stopped to ask whether you actually want. Here's the contradiction at the center of all of this. I want to move forward, and I also don't. Not because you're self-destructive, not because you secretly want to fail, but because moving forward, real moving forward, means leaving something behind. And leaving things behind is always a loss, even when the thing you're leaving behind isn't working for you, even when staying is more painful than going. There's familiarity in the stuck. There's safety in knowing exactly what this feels like. The stuck place is uncomfortable, but it's a known discomfort. You've learned how to live inside it. You know its shape. You know which days are harder and which are manageable. You know the routines that help and the ones that don't. You've adapted. And change, even change towards something better, means stepping into a discomfort you don't know yet. A new set of fears, a new set of risks, a new version of yourself you haven't had to be before. And that unknown is terrifying in its own way. So you stay. Not because you don't want better, but because wanting and moving are 2 completely different things. And the distance between them is often where people live for years. You want to move forward, but you also quietly don't. Both things are true, and carrying both of them without being honest about it is one of the most exhausting things a person can do. There's a kind of thinking that takes over when you're in this place. It's circular. You know it's circular. You can even watch it being circular from some small part of yourself that's standing slightly to the side, observing. And even with that awareness, you can't stop it. You think about the problem. You think about what caused the problem. You think about what you could have done differently. You think about what you should do now. You think about all the reasons the things you should do now might not work. You think about what it means that you can see what you should do but can't make yourself do it. You think about what that says about you. You think about whether people who have it together also think like this or whether it's just you. And then you're back at the beginning. The problem, unresolved, waiting. The thinking feels like doing something. It's not doing nothing. There's effort in it, real effort. Your mind is working. But at some point the thinking becomes a place to live instead of a path through. And you're so deep inside it that the distinction has blurred. You've been thinking about your life, more than you've been living it. I don't say that as criticism. I say it because I think it's true, and I think you already know it. And sometimes it helps to have what you already know said out loud by someone who isn't judging you for it. What no one talks about, not really, is how lonely this particular version of struggling is. Because you're not in crisis. You're not at the bottom. You're functioning. You're fine by most definitions of fine. And so there's no moment where someone swoops in. No intervention, no obvious support, no clear permission to fall apart and need help. You're just quietly not okay inside a life that looks okay from the outside. And the mismatch between those two things is its own kind of lonely. You smile at the right times. You answer questions with the expected answers. You keep the internal weather mostly hidden because who really wants to hear it? And because explaining it would require putting words to something you can barely articulate even to yourself. Because the version you'd have to tell someone, the full version, the one with the circular thinking and the hedged hope and the exhaustion that has no obvious cause, that version is too complicated, too much, too hard to compress into a conversation that exists between other things. And so you carry it alone. Most people do. Most people are carrying some version of this alone, right now, in their own private dark, and none of them know the person next to them is carrying it too. That's almost funny. It's also one of the loneliest facts about being human. Here's something that took me a long time to understand, and I'm still not sure I fully understand it. Progress isn't always visible, and the absence of visible progress is not the same as the absence of progress. I know that might sound like something someone says to make you feel better, but hear me out, because I mean it in a very unglamorous, unsexy way. When you spend a year feeling stuck, you're not the same person you were at the beginning of that year, even if nothing has changed, even if you can't name a single external thing that improved. You are different. You failed at some things and quietly absorbed what that failure felt like. You've tried approaches that didn't work and crossed them off the list. You've gotten more honest with yourself about things you used to avoid being honest about. You've been refined, slowly and without your permission, by the pressure of the time. That's not nothing. It's not everything. It's not what you wanted, but it's not nothing. The years that feel the most wasted are sometimes the ones doing the most interior work. And interior work doesn't show up in any way you can point to. You can't say, look, I built this. Look, I achieved this. You just have to trust, and it is a genuine act of trust, that the process has been doing something even when the product was invisible. I'm not asking you to feel good about that. I'm just asking you to not be entirely certain it was all for nothing. And here's the other thing, the one that's uncomfortable to say because it doesn't come wrapped in comfort. Sometimes you're stuck because of you. Not all of it, not unfairly, not cruelly, but some of it. There's something you already know you need to do, or stop doing, or say, or ask, or admit, and you haven't. And on some level you know exactly why. And the reason why has a shape you recognize even if you don't like to look at it directly. Maybe it's a decision you've been postponing, because making it means accepting something you're not ready to accept. Maybe it's a conversation you've been avoiding, because having it changes things in ways you can't fully predict. Maybe it's a version of yourself you'd have to let go of, a story you've been telling about who you are and what you're capable of and what you deserve. And letting that go feels like a kind of death, even if it would actually be a kind of freedom. I don't know what yours is, but I think you do. And I'm not saying you need to do it tonight. I'm not saying you need to do it now. I'm just saying that the thing you're not looking at is probably part of the stuck, and no amount of productivity or self-improvement will reach it. Only you looking at it directly, honestly, in your own time will reach it. So what do you do with all of this? Honestly, I don't know that you do anything. Not right now, not tonight. I think sometimes the most important thing is just to stop performing okay when you're not okay. Not to anyone else necessarily, but to yourself. To drop the internal story that says you should have this figured out by now, that you should be further along, That the confusion is a personal failure rather than just a season. Seasons end, not on a schedule, not when you want them to, but they end. And between now and then, there's just this: the night, the rain if there is rain, the quiet if there isn't, the version of yourself that's still trying, even when it doesn't feel like it's doing anything, even when the trying feels like it's going nowhere, even when you're tired and uncertain and quietly heartbroken about the distance between where you are and where you thought you'd be. That version of you is real and is doing something important, even now, even tonight. You are not stuck because you stopped caring. You are stuck because you care so much it exhausts you. And exhaustion is not failure. Exhaustion is the cost of showing up over and over in conditions that weren't what you signed up for. It makes sense that you're tired. It makes sense that you don't have all the answers. It makes sense that some days the getting up is as much as you can manage. What doesn't make sense is the story that says it will always be this way. It won't always be this way. Not because everything will suddenly work out. Not because the universe rewards effort with results on a satisfying timeline, but because you are not a fixed thing. You are a person in a process, and processes move. Slowly, invisibly, in directions you can't always track, but they move. It's late. Or maybe it's not late where you are. Maybe it's afternoon and you've had a hard day and you needed something to sit with. Maybe it's early morning and you couldn't sleep. Maybe it's somewhere in between and you just needed to hear that someone else has been in the middle of something they couldn't explain. Here you are anyway, still here, still listening, still underneath all the tiredness and the doubt and the quiet frustration. Still carrying that thread of something. Hope feels too large a word for it, but it's in that family. That thing that made you click on this. That thing that makes you keep looking, even when you're not sure what you're looking for. Don't let go of that. Not because it will definitely lead somewhere good, but because it's yours, and it's one of the realest things about you. You don't have to be okay tonight. You don't have to have it figured out. You don't have to be further along. You just have to be here, and you are. That's where it starts. Not with a plan, not with clarity, not with the feeling of finally being ready, just with being here, honest, tired, still in it, still trying. And that, even when it doesn't feel like it, is everything.